There is a pothole on the A64 outside York that has been reported to the council 43 times. It is not unique. It is not even unusual. Britain has a backlog of local road repairs that, as of 2024, would take 11 years to clear at current funding levels. 11 years. The roads that connect British towns to each other, that carry school runs and ambulances and delivery vans and the weekly shop, are crumbling faster than the money exists to fix them. But this is not a story about potholes. It is a story about how Britain decided over several decades that roads were an expense rather than an asset, and how that decision compounded year after year until the gap between British road quality and European road quality became too wide to explain away. In the decades following the Second World War, the British state viewed the road network as a primary engine of economic growth rather than a fiscal burden. This expansion began with the Special Roads Act of 1946, a landmark piece of legislation that established the legal framework for a new class of high-speed, restricted-access highways. By December 1958, this ambition took physical form when Prime Minister Harold Macmillan opened the 8-mile Preston Bypass. Built for £3 million, this inaugural stretch of motorway became an immediate symbol of national progress. Just 1 year later, the first section of the M1 motorway opened, proving that British civil engineering could build trunk roads to the highest international standards, drawing directly on German Autobahn design principles. When engineers routed the original M6 through the scenic terrain of the Lake District, the project won global praise for harmonizing heavy infrastructure with the environment. At this mid-century peak, roads were built as productive assets designed to generate wealth. The global energy shock of 1973 and the subsequent 1976 IMF sterling crisis forced a stark reassessment of British public spending. To meet strict deficit reduction targets, the Treasury reclassified road maintenance, moving it from long-term capital asset protection to a yearly revenue expense. This administrative shift changed how roads were valued. Upkeep was no longer an investment in national wealth, but a recurring cost to be minimised. At the same time, the physical burden fell disproportionately on local authorities, who managed 98% of the road network. As the central government squeezed municipal formula grants, local councils were forced to defer routine resurfacing to balance their annual books. But delaying road repairs carries a compounding financial penalty. According to analysis by the UK Roads Liaison Group, postponing a £1 surface repair for 5 years allows water and traffic to degrade the lower pavement layers, ballooning the eventual restoration cost to £4. Decades of these deferred interventions transformed a temporary budgeting tactic into a permanent structural deficit. By 2024, the Alarm Survey recorded a local road maintenance backlog of £16.3 billion in England and Wales. What began as a series of short-term fiscal compromises in the 1970s ultimately redefined British highway management, turning a high-performing economic asset into a permanent national obligation. The vulnerability of British roads is not just a function of budget deficits, it is also a consequence of engineering standards. While European nations built highways designed for durability, Britain increasingly engineered its road surfaces to meet the bare minimum acceptable standards. The expected design life for new British road surfaces dropped from 20 years down to just 12. This shorter lifespan guaranteed a cycle of rapid deterioration, forcing local authorities into constant, short-term patching. Other countries chose a different path. Throughout the 1970s and the 1980s, West Germany systematically rebuilt and strengthened the load-bearing base courses of its autobahns to handle escalating freight traffic. Around the same time, France established a dedicated infrastructure fund, shielding its national and regional road networks, the routes nationales and the routes départementales, from the volatility of annual political budgets. This technical gap persists today. When Transport Scotland resurfaced sections of the A9 in 2024, engineers applied a thin, polymer-modified surface course to improve durability. It was a step forward for the route, but the underlying technique was one that Sweden's Transport Authority had already adopted as a standard engineering specification in 1995. The physical contrast on the ground is the direct result of these diverging choices, one system engineered to last and the other built merely to survive. The physical decline of the network accelerated as the local authorities tasked with maintaining it underwent a profound structural transformation. The Local Government Act of 1988 introduced compulsory competitive tendering, forcing municipal councils to open routine road maintenance to private bids. Direct labour organisations, the in-house public works departments that had traditionally managed and repaired British roads, rapidly faded. Within a few years of the legislation's passage, 4 out of 5 highway maintenance jobs shifted from these permanent public workforces to private, external contractors. This systemic shift changed the underlying incentives for road repairs. Where in-house teams once managed roads with a long-term civic horizon, private contractors were bound by short-term contract cycles, typically lasting just 3 to 5 years. For a private operator working to a 3-year horizon, there is little financial reason to design a patch that lasts 7 years. The system rewarded the fastest, lowest-cost fix rather than the most durable one. The real-world consequence of this procurement model was starkly illustrated in an audit by Cumbria County Council. The review revealed that 63% of contracted resurfacing works required remedial repairs within just 18 months of being handed over. Even under major regional agreements, such as Cumbria's £55 million, 3-year framework with Carlisle-based DSD Construction, the reliance on fragmented task orders meant success was measured at the moment of handover, leaving the long-term structural risk of early failure to be borne entirely by the public. British drivers contribute roughly £35 billion annually through fuel duty and vehicle excise duty. Yet the Department for Transport receives only about £12 billion for both capital projects and network maintenance. The rest does not disappear. It flows directly into the Treasury's general account. Unlike a public utility where user fees fund service delivery, British road taxation remains general government revenue. There is no statutory ring fencing to protect these receipts for tarmac. By comparison, other European nations structure their road finance to shield it from annual political shifts. Germany's Autobahn GmbH operates as a federally managed entity with secure multi-year funding allocations. France uses a toll concession model that legally binds toll revenues to the long-term maintenance of the specific networks that generate them. In Britain, the financial architecture treats road upkeep as a competing budget cost rather than a self-sustaining asset. The financial divergence appears directly on the tarmac today. In the World Economic Forum's 2019 Global Road Quality Rankings, the United Kingdom placed 29th, far behind its continental neighbours. This gap represents more than just driver discomfort. 56% of British A roads fall below the safety standards common on French and German networks, according to Eurorap. For emergency services and delivery fleets, these standards cause real-world transit delays and increased vehicle wear. Response times show a similar gap. While the Dutch Road Authority typically resolves a reported pothole in 5 days, the British average drags to 47 days. In 2025, major stretches of the A303 remain single carriageways, whereas Germany dualled its comparable federal highways, the Bundesstraßen, in the 1980s. The British road experience is the visible result of decades of policy choices that treated infrastructure as an expense rather than an asset. If this story interested you, there is a video right here about what happened to Britain's railways. Subscribe to the channel to support our work. When roads are treated as short-term expenses rather than long-term assets, decline becomes inevitable. Britain is now living with the physical consequences. If this story interested you, there is a video right here about what happened to Britain's railways. Subscribe for more.